Alright people, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. That way you'll know when I upload the next video and you'll be supporting my channel. Follow me on Twitter. Every time I upload a new video, I'll be tweeting. Ladies and gents, almost as you reaction. This is What If Britain Never Conquered India by the channel Alternate History Hub. A company took over India, but colonial rule continued their legacy. What if India was never colonized by the British or any European power for that matter? Here's one alternate scenario. I like Alternate History Hub. In that we basically, he always, I guess, checks all the different scenarios, what would have happened if this event didn't happen, which is kind of hard to predict, but it's always fun exercise to see. So I guess we're going to see what happens here. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more, I guess. Check out other reaction I did. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast, check out the end cards in here. Let's watch it.
Millions wouldn't have died from famine. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Oh, in Bengal, yeah.
Sometimes history seems like very unrealistic fiction. Like a private company from a small island somehow is able to conquer one of the oldest civilizations on Earth. To us today, yeah, it doesn't seem like fiction. But even with Britain's modern equipment and exploitation of alliances during a chaotic time, it's insane that the East India Company at all was able to ever get as far as they did. In fact, it's very likely had they made one wrong move, their venture could have easily gone bankrupt. But we're in our timeline, and even though the East India Company and even the British Empire is long gone, the echoes of their influence remain prominent today. So what if history had gone more predictably? India just isn't controlled by Britain. But for the sake of this being an actually interesting video, let's say no European nation actually conquers India. Maybe there's the occasional European fort, but never is there direct control over most of the subcontinent. Simple enough, right?
Look, if any European country ever comes to India, they are going to take over it. Because unlike Japan, India at the time was, there was many different kingdoms fighting each other, right? There was no one unifying emperor at the time, which makes things harder because now, Britain can use divide and conquer mentality to strengthen their, their numbers, I guess. Because of number-wise, Britain does not win ever. India's way too big and population is big too even at the time. But so since there is so many Mughals, right, Marathas, there's many other kingdoms, it's very easier to manipulate and, manipulate different local kings here and there, things like that.
In an alternate 18th century, the Mughals would still be on their way out, British or not. The same cannot be said for the next major power, the Marathas. The Maratha Empire, as it was called, although it was more of a confederacy, rose out of rebellion against the Mughals. Really, it was fragmented between local rulers. Hence the title. Without the British in Bengal waging war on the Maratha in 3 separate occasions, it's likely the Confederacy could have lasted at least another century or so. The systems they set up brought in an era of prosperity, but were fragile. The power of the Confederacy was fueled by loyalty to individual charismatic leaders than any ideology or sense of unity. Think like Charlemagne's empire, or the Mongols. Once the old guard dies, the bonds break down. The Maratha dwindle in size, and once again the subcontinent is a tapestry of small princedoms, sultanates, and empires. This isn't to say chaos or anarchy with constant warfare. It's simply going back to how historically India has always been, much like how Europe is split between
chaos. In old India, wait a minute. In an alternate universe, in no colonial India, there is only war.
Between different nations. Okay, so maybe there would be some warfare. The point is, what the Mughals and British did was unite various different ethnic and language groups by force. An India formed without the boot of the British is one that is disunified and fragmented, but only because there isn't a need for that national identity of Indianness. It was a concept formed through the common interest to make the British Raj an independent state. In this alternate timeline, during the waves of 19th century nationalism, there becomes some vague notion among the elite.
Alright, first of all, some people are misconception that India was not a one country, like, it's like Europe. Every state is its own country. There was no one India or something like that. India as a nation didn't exist. Like, there was no central government. There's no one emperor ruling India, things like that. But India as a country existed from way long ago, right? There are thousands of your scriptures basically mentions Bharata, which basically is the, proper native name for India, right? These are thousands of year old scriptures that says Bharata. Anything, beyond Indus River is like, India, basically. That's where the name comes from, right? Even the, Alexander the Great came and, stopped at the Indus River. From there, the name was basically, this is, Indus Valley civilization type of thing. So India, basically. There was a very old Indus Valley civilization around the Indus River, and then it grew into a basic, massive country, right? So it wasn't that, a country didn't exist. A country was there, right? Everybody recognized, oh, India is a country. This whole region is country, even though it was ruled by different people in different local areas. One nation didn't exist. There was no central government type of thing, central empire type of thing. But as a country, it existed.
Educated upper class that a united India would be a good dream, but the reality is far harder to implement without a common enemy. Any unification India would go through would be a bloody process. Just look at Germany and Italy. Those countries are far smaller than
Japan,
India.
200
Any
years
unification of India, if successful, isn't seen through a national identity, but just a successor to the Mughals. When this concept of national identity does eventually arise, it'd be among smaller regions, with perhaps even already tiny Indian states balkanizing themselves just like Austria-Hungary did after World War I. This leaves a question. Would India ever unify? This is going to sound counterproductive to the points I just made, but yes, maybe. Just not in the way that we have India today. India isn't ever officially a country, but the concept of India is created near the modern day as a system of alliances, much like the EU. Cooperation is seen as much more beneficial and keeps their states from being trampled on by larger outside influences. However this is implemented, the concept of this alternate India is born without the overall threat of a European empire, meaning situations like a Muslim Pakistan and Hindu India don't happen. There would be various states that either favor Islam, Hinduism, or perhaps just have a mix of both. And since the British don't create what is now Pakistan's western border, the territory of the Pashtun is never simply split in half. Still is going into a world on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. So what do?
You have 10 minutes to finish your research. You rush it.
Holy shit, one East India company, if their accents would have been different and somehow India wasn't colonized, how so many things would have been different from Afghanistan to Pakistan, how India would look and everything. It's just weird to see this kind of ripple effect.
India would not modernize like Europe did, even if it was not under the control of Europeans. This has nothing to do with culture or philosophy, but simply population and economics. Northern India has always been one of the most heavily populated regions in the world, and with such a high population, labor was cheap, wages were low, everyone needed a job. Meanwhile in Britain, the population was far smaller, and not only did they have an abundance of coal to fuel new innovations, but higher wages actively encouraged business owners to invest in machines that would replace their workers and save money. Innovation, especially with industrialization.
I don't think it's just that, right? It's not just the worker thing. If you have less population, whatever resources you have with that less population, you are kind of rich per person. Per person you're rich. So if you're in a rich environment, there is a tendency to be, I guess, more comfortable life, right? There's tendency to, I guess, to look for more, I guess, scientific advancement, because if people are, living in comfort and somewhat rich is fine enough, and they can basically look forward to, I guess, philosophy, science and thoughts like that, rather than just, worrying about their survival all the time. So whenever a country, peaks at their economy, right, per person rich is pretty high, That is when you'll see that certain country or region basically thrives in scientific advancement. Same thing with Germany, I guess, when Germany was found. Germany became, I guess, scientific hub of the world because of that.
Came out of the need to make profit and avoid those high wages. India didn't have this luck. A textile machine would put far more Indians out of work than Europeans. Laborers out of work due to machines revolt against their rulers, and rulers don't want that. For a while, India wouldn't have industrialized as fast as Europe or East Asia. However, at least compared to our timeline, it would be far more wealthy. It'd still have the products like cotton, silk, textiles, and tea to sell to traders. It's just this time, the profits would go to the hands of the rulers, or at least merchants, in Indian states themselves. There is, however, one main downside to not industrializing: modern war. European nations could simply fight a war more efficiently. I think just as
That's
East
the thing.
Asia learned...
This whole alternate thing doesn't make sense because, India has, spices, money, and resources. So, advanced country around the world would not attack it. Why? That doesn't even make sense. If not during the Britain time, maybe later on, somewhere else time, maybe during the World War, somebody would have attacked India. Right? It doesn't make sense otherwise. If you look at the globe, I guess, if you were in space and look down on all the places, India would be pretty apparent to you just because how it is in where its position, I guess.
Following defeats from Western empires, industrializing allows you to have a modern military, and that'd be a question many states across the subcontinent would begin to ask themselves. Alright, I know it's absurd that the British just avoid India altogether,
Yes.
but in this alternate timeline, let's just say that their only relationship to India is mutual trade. This way, their market still gets those leaves
Like China?
without the whole conquering part. Simple enough, but buying and trading for goods from another party is far more expensive than owning production yourself. Without the EIC to force Indians to plant certain types of cash crops, prices go up. And in the mercantile world, having things like people planting food to survive or fairly dealing in a foreign market is just bad business, discouraging investment from home. So from an economic standpoint, the crown never has its jewel. That geopolitical position of Britain as the massive power it was in the 19th century is gone. Without Indian cotton, does the British textile industry just never grow? Well, no, It would still exist.
Yeah.
It'd just be smaller.
That is so true. Without all the Indian resources, British Empire as a whole wouldn't have peaked the way it did, right? I mean, you do need resources for the empire to peak. That's pretty fucking important. And if you don't have India, that's hard.
More reliant on American imports. The raw goods the British economy receives is just shifted. The main change is profits. There are less cheap exports from India to take advantage of, which means less wealth to spend on things that do affect history. War, global policy, empire building. I could talk about this a lot, but we both know that you don't want me talking for 20 minutes about British textiles, so let's move on to something else. Without having access to the poppy fields of Bengal, the British don't have the leverage to sell opium to the Chinese market. Or more specifically, create one of the largest drug smuggling operations in history, because the only thing the Chinese would buy for the British was opium. So yes, while there are no opium wars, I don't think this change would be that drastic. Britain still has that technological advantage, and could just barge in with their modern military and demand China concede to their demands anyway. Remember that famine that killed 10 million Bengalese? Well, such a situation left the East India Company almost bankrupt. To save the company, Parliament implemented a tax on East India Company tea to the Americas. The colonists did not like this, of course, and started smuggling Dutch tea instead in protest. Parliament allowed the company to sell tea directly to the colonies, still at a tax. And to the colonists, this was seen as a monopoly on trade, and one that hurt local smuggling of Dutch tea. Long story, incredibly short, this was what led to the Boston Tea Party. In a weird twist of fate, if Britain didn't have India, there would never have been a Boston Tea Party. Does this change a lot for the American Revolution?
Oh my god!
No. There are still, like, 12 other reasons why America would have rebelled, but I thought it was an interesting fact.
I mean, would have thought, right? I mean, if Britain weren't, if Britain didn't have India, there's no Boston Tea Party. would have Britain, I guess, did all the economical thing they did with America like that? Would have America seen that as, the taxes are too much, or taxes without representation? Would have been that stronger, I guess. I don't know. He should make a video about that. What if Britain never conquered India? What would have happened to USA? He should make a video about that.
Fact, and couldn't really fit it in anywhere. Removing India from the British takes the engine out of the car. I don't know if there would have been an empire without it. It fueled the growth.
Yeah.
And really, by me imagining Britain without India, it's the world without the British Empire.
Look, here's what I'm thinking. This might not be perfect analogy, but it's like what if Hunter didn't have his hunting place? He would have found some other hunting place. Maybe they would have tried to sack entire continent of Africa with whatever they can find, right? Maybe they've gone to, I guess they would have traveled to Americas pretty earlier, went to something like South America, Brazil area, and South American places, right? I don't know. They probably would have tried to do something, right? They would have probably sacked most of Africa if that would have been the case.
Which is a whole other scenario in itself. It could be a situation where the balance of European powers is shifted so much that the First World War never happens.
Yeah.
Or perhaps
that wouldn't be as wealthy, that's for
conflict, sure. Britain isn't in the winning favor. As for India themselves into this modern
Germany
world,
like that.
The industrialization process would come eventually, dramatically shifting Indian society, but it'd be a change by India. It wouldn't be an India as we know it, but a system of alliances, all acting independent from one another, but occasionally uniting. An alternate time...
Look, not necessarily. Like I said, Bharat as a concept existed for long ago. Any civilization beyond Indus River, right, was considered Bharat from the ancient times even, right? From the Indus Valley civilization, which was very old, right? Everything beyond that was considered Bharat or India, basically, to the foreigners. So yeah, at the time it wasn't, but as soon as more things got modernized, right, world trading, obviously technology wouldn't have stopped, right? So eventually people would have, I guess, come to a conclusion, like we always seen this as Bharata, everybody has seen this beyond Indus Valley, Indus River civilizations, right? People do call this region India. So people would have just, put two and two together and eventually would have, I guess, like he said, maybe would have created some kind of a union type thing. There's like EU, or maybe united the entire country. India would have existed, it would be much larger, right? Anything beyond, Indus River, that would be a much larger country, but it would be like that. Maybe not as, strong country and nation that is today, like India. It would be something like a union, but yeah.
Line where really any path for the subcontinent is possible. Like I said, the only true thing to predict is millions don't die from famine. This is Cody of Alternate History Hub.
Yeah. Damn, this is Alternate History Hub is such a good channel and good concept that they would never run out of videos to make, right? And they are really brilliant as well. I've seen a few videos from this channel already. I don't react to this much. I think I should change that. But, this is such a good channel and such a good concept that they could make so many different things. What if this would have happened? How many things would have changed? This topic alone creates another topic, like what would have happened to USA, everything else. How would a world war have gone if England didn't have India? England would have found, Africa and other places to conquer, right? But still wouldn't have as much as resources as they did because of India. So that, but this whole concept stands on what if some European power doesn't conquer India? That doesn't make sense, right? India is just there. It has many resources, and European colonies were advanced in technology. Why wouldn't they conquer India? That never makes sense. Of course, they're going to do that. Maybe if India got conquered by one local ruler and unified, like how China and Japan was, right? Britain never completely conquered Japan, right? They just did the trading thing because there was one emperor. Then the same, China had also one emperor. So if India had one emperor, maybe things would have gone differently. Since it had many different rulers of local regions, it became more easier to exploit, I guess. Alright, people, if you like my Rick Sandro, like, subscribe. Check out the Rick Sandro, there's a link in the description. Check out the cards, check out the ink cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.